Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL strategy show. Yes, the tournament strategy edition. Sims breakdown, really our favorite show of the week because, well, I like that it's kind of, you have like a cool type of recipe, Greg. And you and I over the summer went over like how we were going to decide to do DFS content for football throughout the year. And it's kind of cool that like the single lineup sim show on Wednesday is bookended by the first look show, which is a hangout kind of foundational look. Just, let's take a first look, go over the players. People that love football like myself just love breaking down an early slate. And then you have this where we're actually getting a lot of information, and we're actually like, now we have enough information to where everything's kind of coming into focus. So it all comes full circle each week, and now we get to look at what the best lineups look like heading into week 10. What's up, brother?
Yeah, and had an excellent Thursday night game last night as well.
Wow.
Bengals playing the Ravens. It was a really high-scoring game, and I know people in the chat talking about their lineup scored all these points last night, but they didn't come in first place or anything in the showdown. But yeah, I mean, when the game's 35-34, a lot of lineups are going to score a lot of points, especially on a one-game slate. But if you feel bad, think about how Jamar Chase feels with all the stats he put up and wasn't able to get a win, because he was ridiculous. He was a one-man wrecking crew last night, and it did not result in a win for the Bengals.
Unbelievable. Somebody actually DM'd me because I didn't have a great night DFS-wise. Had a great betting night for Thursday night football. Mark Andrews touchdown. Mm-hmm. We hit the Bet365 parlay and got – are you on Bet365? Because I know they limit people, but I had just signed up in July, and our EV tool doesn't work there. So I just use my own stuff, and I bet only a few, probably only a handful of bets every week where I'm getting the best odds over there. And I've killed it there, but they haven't limited me yet. I got $100 in bonus bets too yesterday. There were 10 touchdowns scored in that game. It's been a print. Do you think if they knew that Thursday night football was going to look like it did, like usually it's been historically low scoring. You think if they knew Thursday night football was going to have 7 to 8, 9, 10 touchdowns every week, they would have run this promo?
Yeah, I think they probably thought every game was going to be like Jets-Titans on Thursday Night Football or like Patriots-Jaguars or something, but there have been good ones. And I know one of the games that I've been looking forward to the most is next Thursday as well, and probably for you as well, because it's the Eagles playing at home against the Commanders for first place in the NFC East. Jaden Daniels has been great so far this year, and I think this is like a real litmus test for the Commanders of, is this a team that's like a low-end playoff team? Or if they win this game, then I think we would have to consider the Commanders to be like an actual contender.
Absolutely. It's going to be it's a really big game. But yeah, somebody DM me because I didn't even look at the top scores. I knew it wasn't mine. And I said, all right, we'll focus on everything else. I still had a lot of NHL bets going. And he's like, yo, this is a main slate milli score winner. Like the top showdown lineup had 220 DraftKings points.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, there's also the multiplier spot. So it's like,
of course, but still, that's a massive number regardless. Like when you have Jamar Chase at captain.
What did Jamar Chase finish with in the captain spot?
83, like someone said in chat.
Yeah, was it that much? Yeah, it was something absurd.
Yeah, that's like an elite Nikola Jokic game.
Yeah, it's a lot of fantasy points.
Crazy. Oh, no. Derry said 87.6.
Yeah, because he had, 3 touchdowns and 230 yards or something?
And a loss. I don't blame him for going for 2 there. Somebody had tweeted that if you don't go for 2, you're wrong. If you go for 2, you're wrong. Yeah, whatever. It is what it is. Anyway, glad you guys.
By the way, going for 2, 100% the right call. It doesn't matter that, at least for me, I don't look at the results, whether it's right or wrong. No. I'm just considering the process. So to me, no matter what the results of those plays were, Bengals should have gone for 2 last night, and then Buccaneers should have gone for 2 against the Chiefs.
Exactly. Justin Sports said, Gajeski, where are you? Yeah, Gajeski will have some questions to answer. Come next. Do you know why?
I have no clue.
Big time Jamar Chase hater.
Oh, no.
He refuses to put him in the conversation of top 5. Just a big time Jamar Chase hater. Not a hater, but won't put him up there in the top 5. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Hey, if you haven't done so yet, take a single second, atone for your sins this morning, heading into the weekend. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. We read and respond to all of them. At the very least, read them. And we appreciate all you guys supporting this show over the weeks, over the months, over the years, the channel, all that stuff. Totally free to subscribe. If you ever want to listen in podcast form, you ever want to do any of that, Apple Podcast, Spotify, if you didn't want to do it on YouTube, maybe wanted to close your phone or something, we got you. And also, Greg, I want to shout out everyone who's at work, maybe doing a delivery ride or working Lyft or Uber. I saw a comment in there. You know what I mean? Or they're at the desk. There are a lot of mailmen watch this show. Shout out to them for hanging out with us in the morning and killing the time with some Stokastic strategy show.
Yeah, and if you guys are watching, throw some questions into the chat. Lofty and I are always looking at those over the course of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. You ready to do this?
Let's do it.
All right, so 10-game slate. You got 4 teams on a bye. You got the Germany game, that real, beautiful spot between Carolina and the New York Giants. Yeah. I'm actually excited to watch it. I have a lot of bets on that. See, there you go, truck driver. Yeah, John said I'm a mailman. Yeah, let us know. Let us know what you. This is my favorite part of doing this show. Let us know what you do. Ashton said body shop. My favorite part, seeing like what people are up to right now during the day as we're at work doing this show and they're at work listening. It's a beautiful thing. USPS for Frank. See, dude, I don't know what it is. We attract the mailmen. It's a wonderful thing. David's an insurance adjuster. Of course you are, David. They would be, the people complaining about the timeliness of myself.
It would be funny if he was like, yeah, I work in the NBA. I manage the clock or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm the shot clock manager.
Yeah. He operates the doomsday clock for the United States of America. Anyway, let's get into it. Jacob producing this show. Shout out to him too, because he's, behind the controls, operating all of this so we can see what's going on. And that is good stuff. So let me go full screen here. There we go. All right. First way we always do this, because we want to provide analysis, but we want to look at how what these lineups look like. We'll look at how the lineups are built. Are we getting a lot of 2 tight ends? Are we getting a lot of like QB +3, mega stacks, a lot of run backs? And then we'll go into exposures, look at stack exposures, look at quarterbacks. Kind of, I don't know. I like working backwards a little bit here, Greg.
Well, here's one thing that is not going to be backwards as much as just immediately stands out on the screen. We like the Vikings this week.
Whoa. Well, so do I. But you know what's always funny? Sometimes you'll see this and you'll have like, I don't think this will be the case today, but you'll see like the top 10 lineups, all one stack, and then you only have like 10% of it. Sometimes it's just that those specific lineups simmed out the best, in our tens of thousands of sims. We also really like right now the 2 tight ends. Would you look at that? Now, I don't know if Disley's going to continue to be projected this high as we go into Sunday based on some injuries, but look at and it is a pass funnel matchup for the Chargers against the Titans. Minnesota, no, can you do like the slow scroll here, the slow reveal, Jacob, so we can see if there's any run backs, what we're working with? Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Atlanta. Okay, so now we're starting to open up a little bit. Still a lot of Minnesota. Still a lot of double tight end. How do you feel about this? And what are your assumptions when we go into exposures? Is it just we're going to be loaded up on the high-priced guys? We almost have to be at the other positions.
Well, I think another part of it too is we don't have any really cheap running backs that look good as of now that we've had on other slates. And then also a wide receiver, we could look at some of the cheap, like I like some of the cheap guys from Tampa Bay, and I assume that like Trey Palmer is showing up in lineups, but there aren't that many cheap wide receivers to really love for this slate. And then when you also consider the amount of Viking stacks we're getting, it means what? We have to have a lot of Justin Jefferson. I can't imagine that there's other pass catchers from Minnesota. They're showing up a ton in these lineups. So if it's a slate, there isn't running back value. There aren't that many great cheap wide receivers to roster. Then it just, you have to save the salary to get up to Justin Jefferson, who our data, I'm assuming, is going to like. And that just means that it's the tight ends. That's where you save value for the slate. And then also, I do think this is a fairly good slate for cheaper tight ends. We talked on Wednesday about Juwan Johnson, for instance. We talked about Will Dissly. And these are all guys who are really, really cheap. So it does look like, as of now, the best value is probably at the tight end position. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go and look at the tight ends and just add up the exposures really quick. If it's just a lot of our lineups like we're seeing here, super high percentage probably are double tight end lineups.
Yeah, like 200% at this point. It's pretty crazy. And we'll see if it holds. Sometimes that's the thing. If value opens up in the coming days and we get like significant injury reports on players, that the first thing that changes, Greg, is the 2 tight ends.
Yeah. One other thing that we could do at the end, this is like getting way ahead of ourselves, but we could also take some of the tight ends out of the flex spot and just see how that would change exposure. We wanted to do that later on, but moving down later on for the show.
How would you do that?
Yeah, so if you wanted to, you could go into some of the tight ends, just like lower their ROIs for individual tight ends, and that would just thin out some of the double tight end lineups.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because that might be the most common question we get. Don't you think? I think it's the most common question we get when people use the Sims. They go, how do I tamp down the exposure to 2 tight ends in all of these lineups? So if you're doing that, would you go, obviously, so now would you bring the ROI down, or would you cap some of these guys?
I would bring the ROI down, and I would probably go to, if you go to the ROI boost, Jacob. Yeah, now especially it's really easier to do this year than it was, say, like last year, where we just had all of the players grouped together. We didn't have it by position. You could just go right down the line and do like, don't do it now because I want to see what our actual exposures are to everybody. But what I would do here is maybe just do like a 20% negative ROI boost to all of the tight ends, and then just refavor the top 150 and see what that ends up making the lineup.
Let's try that later, definitely, and see what it looks like. All right, so we also had a question that said, or a comment that said, looks like no Saquon. You know, I expected this on Tuesday when Ben and I were talking in the first look show. Saquon's amazing, okay? He's amazing. I honestly think I'm not joking. I truly think in some of the larger field, like lower stake stuff, Saquon Barkley's ownership is going to be artificially inflated because of that hurdle from last week and because of that game. I'm not kidding, dude. Like a couple percent might go additionally to Saquon because people just go, wow, this guy is the greatest. How do I fade that against the Cowboys as a 7-point favorite? But I run into the same problem I do every week with Saquon. Greg, we haven't had a single week all year that I can remember where we haven't just had loads of great mid-range running backs who are bell cows. Unlike any other season in recent memory, every week you've got these 6K guys, these mid 7K, low 7K guys, even low 6K guys where you go, oh, this is a 20-touch guy in a good spot at 6,300.
Yeah, and I mean, then even last week, something happens like Chase Brown opens up, and it was impossible to get away from Chase Brown. If you did, you were probably hurting your lineup. So that's already one of your running back spots probably taken up in all, if not most of your lineups last week. And then you had just other running backs in really good spots as well. And then if you look at some of the other pay-ups for this week, I mean, Alvin Kamara, I don't think it's wrong that Alvin Kamara is projecting for more fantasy points than Barkley just because of all the passing game work that Kamara gets. He's another guy who had a massive game last week and put up fantasy points that was comparable to Saquon Barkley. So Barkley's having a really, really good fantasy season, but still, it's not like he's not even a lock to be in winning lineups in some of these slates, even if he puts up like 35 fantasy points, just because there are running backs who on individual slates produce comparably but at cheaper price points.
I think he was in the Millie lineup last week, but if you looked, I mentioned this too, if you look at the power sweep and a lot of because that's what I care more about. Like when I'm doing the post contest simulator, you'll see it up there. It's under the top banner. But like the post contest simulator, I love looking at that and seeing what lineups performed well, how my simmed ROI compared to my actual ROI, and all of that stuff. What type of builds are working this year? This is what kind of using that tool last year led me to going more running back, wide receiver without the quarterback and a concentrated offense, getting me to more lineups without a run back. I would rather look at a lot of the mid stakes, $100, $150, $50 single entry stuff, because that's where I like to play most of it. And the top 3-4 lineups in a lot of those, Greg, didn't have Barkley at all, because you had Achane, you had Chase Brown, you had Alvin Kamara, who wasn't far behind and was a little bit cheaper than Barkley. So It's just the way it is. We've seen it with Tyreek Hill so many times where he's 9K, has a great game, but you didn't need him. So let's see. Let's go to exposures here and let's start with stack exposure, Jacob.
To the left. Yeah.
Because the screen, I guess, there we go. And go to QB +2, because this is where you're going to see a lot of those builds.
Yeah.
So look, go ahead.
Not very many triple stacks, if you notice. It's mostly doubles this week.
Yep. So look, this is what I mean. We have a lot of Darnold, but it's not a crazy amount. It's like 23, 24%.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to be the most rostered QB by, a decent margin in our lineups here. But yeah, it's not 50% of Sam Darnold. He's in a quarter of our lineups. It's a great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We know where most of the targets are going. That's the Justin Jefferson. And you could also certainly fit Aaron Jones into those lineups. That's probably the core of most of those stacks. Sam Darnold, Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson. And it's just trying to corner the market on the production and the touchdowns for the Minnesota Vikings.
And then you have Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing this because I've been kind of, singing his praises all week because he's, in my opinion, he's underpriced. You look at some of the other quarterbacks in that range, right? Like he's less expensive than May against Chicago, than Aaron Rodgers, who hasn't performed. Caleb Williams, that's fine. I can understand that. He's less expensive than Carr. 5,200. This guy's thrown 275 plus yards in 3 straight games. Pass funnel matchup against the Titans. And I think I said this to you on Wednesday, right? My whole belief is like you're finally gelling with the team after missing most of training camp with injuries, being hurt through the first month of the year, having a rookie wide receiver in Ladd McConkey, and a guy in Quentin Johnston who you didn't have much chemistry with last year because Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were there. What if they're just and by the way, first-year head coaches on this team with Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh? What if they're just actually finding their rhythm and you go, you know what? This is a great offensive coordinator, even though they like to run. This is a great head coach. What if this team's actually just good?
Yeah. And I had really big concerns about the Chargers' downside coming into the year. Not because I thought the most likely scenario is that they were going to suck, but just because they had all of these uncertain parts with chemistry. And I saw the path for them to get off to a really rocky start that could unravel the season, but that wasn't the case. They played well in the early going. And now, like you mentioned, everything's kind of getting together. There's more reps with everybody together. Justin Herbert's healthier because he came into the season with the plantar fascia injury, which that's why he wasn't able to participate in training camp. And then he's just starting the year totally cold with pass catchers. He hasn't thrown the ball too much, a new coaching staff, new playbook, and they were just really conservative on offense to open up the season. And now we're starting to see them open it up a little bit more. And as a result, now we could look at it and say like, oh yeah, Justin Herbert throwing the football more. Chargers passing game looks better. But what hasn't picked up on it is the pricing algorithms for DFS sites. And Herbert's one of the cheapest QBs on the entire slate, which makes sense if you're looking at the totality of the season, but it doesn't if you look at the way the offense has been trending.
Exactly. Right. And maybe Dobbins just has a game, but all I can say is looking at these exposures right now, you and I always kind of have fun saying, would you make changes? Would you do anything different? Looking at these exposures, I'm not sure there's anything I'd really want to change as of now. Unless, is there someone I'm missing? Like, I don't see any Hurts, but that's a really expensive stack, especially with A.J. Brown expected to play. Is there anybody I'm missing? Because I like the Baker and Purdy exposure. I like the Herbert and Darnold exposure. What do you see here that I might be maybe like a Flacco or Allen getting a little more of those guys, but I think I'd rather just get the Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, so the one guy who I don't see showing up here, who I think is massive upside, Kirk Cousins going up against the New Orleans Saints. I mean, that Saints defense just has some games where they get obliterated. I know it's a different scenario this week. They just fired Dennis Allen, but I don't know. It's hard for me to think there's that much talent. Well, actually, we do have 5%. He just wasn't on the screen when we were scrolled up before, so I didn't see. So, all right, we've got 5% of Kirk Cousins. That's something. But yeah, initially I thought that we didn't have Kirk Cousins lineup. So I was going to say that he's somebody I wouldn't want to overlook against the Saints.
I got a crazy one for you. What about Derek Carr? This feels like a dead cat bounce where they like Saints come out and divisional home dogs have a huge game.
I don't hate it. I guess the stacks the only thing is, like, I don't know what wide receivers I want to play with Derek Carr, but I guess it would be Alvin Kamara and Juwan Johnson.
Probably, or like Mason Tipton. Can you go to projections, Jacob, and then go to quarterback? I just want to see what the difference in ownership is between Justin Herbert and Derek Carr. You can sort by ownership. It might make it easier. Right side.
Herbert's the most popular Q, or actually might be second most popular now. Yeah.
Basically,
all right, so
the
Herbert's
same.
the second most popular QB. He's 13.3% owned. And there's Carr 1.4% owned. There's also a big projection gap, 13.42 compared to what was the projection on?
Probably 18.
7. Yeah, so we're looking at a 3.5 fantasy point gap.
People are going to hate me for this, but I might boost Derek Carr to get like 5%.
Yeah, 5%. I think that's reasonable. Like I said, I don't know what wide receivers I would play him with, but as I thought about it, I don't even know you have to. Juwan Johnson, I think, is a good tight end option for the slate. And then at running back, obviously, Alvin Kamara looks good. Kamara is going to be popular, but this is a way that you'd play like a massively different Kamara lineup.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a massively different Kamara lineup. What a way to get different, playing a 1% Derek Carr with, because Kamara is going to be ultra chalky.
Yeah, I wonder
they do have a 21-point total, so it's not like they're in the basement.
We don't pull this up that much on the show, but I'm looking at the top stacks tool. I'm just curious to see what the odds we have on each of them being the top scoring team. All right, Saints is less than 1%, and we were comparing that to the Chargers, who are at 4.4%.
Okay. All right, cool. Jacob, let's go back to exposures here. There's a few. I like the reveal. Our friend Ben Rasa, one of the first times I ever met him in person, it was at, what's that hotel? I met him at a hotel.
Yeah, it was a Motel 6 by the beach.
Yeah. Arlo Midway, I think it was. We were there for the FSGA convention, the Fantasy Sports Gaming Association convention, and our rooms were right next to each other. So we were about to go out and grab some drinks and go down and everything. So I walked over, and he's sitting there on the chair with his laptop, and I see him going like this, right? And this is how he was revealing himself to like some, Sudanese Botswana soccer game or something in the middle of the day. He's slow reveal. So he puts his hand over his face and brings it down like this to see what the scores are when he's betting. So I like the reveals when we look at exposure to see what we're getting, because I haven't looked yet. So let's take a look at running backs.
I like that that's how Ben sweats his bizarre soccer bets.
Does it surprise you?
No, not really. It's the same way like my brother opens up baseball cards.
Yeah, right. For sure. I like doing that too. That's how I would do a lot of like Top Shot before that went. Nate said, Lafayette, I had a shutout in my game Tuesday. I dedicated it to your knee. Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. I went to our game. We lost 5-4. It was a second round of the playoffs. Would have won if someone was there. Anyway, grade 1, not bad. But also I went in for the follow-up, and he said he saw some meniscus damage as well. But I think that's probably best case scenario.
Yes. What do you if it's and did you say it was an MCL injury?
MCL, yeah.
Yeah, so MCL usually that repairs itself, unlike the other knee ligaments.
Yep. He said 95% no surgery. So I'll be all right. And now our next game is until December 3rd. So I would assume I'd be able to play. All right. So check this out. This is where I know already that I'll be making some changes. I love the Swift exposure. I love the Connor exposure. I'm a huge Aaron Jones guy. I don't feel, and I know it's 6,700. That's just a wonderful price point. He's the bell cow there, and I'll victory lap it. I expected him to be the bell cow coming into this year. He's too good not to be when he's healthy. However, 70% is a ton when I'm getting 2% Jonathan Taylor against a Bills team that's been absolutely destroyed by running backs this year. And that's just one example. I think running back still has so much depth that while I want a lot of Aaron Jones, I don't think I need to be 2x the field. Personally, I will probably drop him down a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, also looking at some of the other running backs, like we're getting to a lot of Alvin Kamara. There are other guys like, Saquon Barkley. We mentioned that we don't really have much of him. There's a lot of running backs that I think look decent in this like 6 to 7K range. And if you did want to spread out your exposures, it would make sense to do something like do a positive ROI boost to Bijan Robinson, to Jonathan Taylor, to Saquon Barkley. Not that you would go crazy with these guys, but if you get these guys into like closer to 10% of lineups, as opposed to like the 2% of lineups they're in right now, that would lower guys like Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara, not to the point where you don't have a lot of them, but instead of getting like 70% of Aaron Jones, you probably have like 50% of him, and then a little bit more exposure to these other guys, which I would be cool with doing as well.
Yeah. I think I'm with you there. Eric Johnson, Jonathan Taylor's only 9%. Running backs versus the Bills. Come on, people. Yeah, I'm always willing to factor the matchup in, but also I get why he's 9% right now, only because there's just so many other good running backs. But I think I really like Jonathan Taylor in this spot.
We just got really big news, by the way. I don't know if you saw it.
No, I didn't. Break the news, Greg.
Trevor Lawrence, not expected to play this weekend.
Okay, that's not that big of news.
It's kind of, so where it's relevant is we have a ton of Minnesota stacks right now. I have no interest in run backs in those lineups now.
Okay, yeah, but I'm saying, like, do we even have Trevor Lawrence projected in here?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do.
Because he wasn't expected to play. That's what I was saying.
But I think we have him in our projections. I could be wrong on that.
Maybe that would change. Yeah, that would change that for sure. But that line moved to 7 yesterday or the day before. I think yesterday.
I'm checking.
And it was 4. It was 4 and it moved to 7. Yeah, it's at 7 now. So we saw that movement yesterday or the day before. What's today? The 8th?
Yeah. Yeah, we do have Trevor Lawrence projected in right now.
Okay, so that'll change a lot. Would you even want to play anybody from Jacksonville with Lawrence out?
No. Like I was thinking maybe like Evan Ingram at tight end, but there's a lot of decent cheap tight ends on this slate. And no.
All right.
I'd rather just do Onslaught Viking stacks.
I might play Mac Jones at 4,400.
Man,
I watched every this is embarrassing, but because I bet it, but I watched every preseason game that Mac Jones was in. And I know it was the preseason, but he went up against some first units. And dude, he looked good with how bad Trevor Lawrence has been. And last week he was fine in the second half. He still didn't have any rushing or receiving or passing touchdowns. He did have 2 rushing touchdowns. Is Mac Jones viable at 4,400 if you're getting that price point and then like a Brian Thomas and an Evan Ingram stack with you'd have to have, if you're doing this, you got to have like a Justin Jefferson run back or something, or an Aaron Jones run back.
I mean, he's so cheap at $4,400, Mac Jones, that I wouldn't be surprised if when everything's updated, I get like a lineup or 2 of him in the Sims. But yeah, my preference is to not play him. And if I was hand building a lineup, he wouldn't be a consideration for me.
Yeah, look, I'm definitely not going to try and force feed anybody Mac Jones, but I don't know how much worse it can actually be.
You know what's crazy? Mac Jones was actually not like great, but he was good his rookie year. There was reasons to think that like, hey, the Patriots have a building block here. He progressively got worse every year he was in the league past his first year, which is very rare for a quarterback when there's not an injury involved.
It's very rare. Mac Jones had no pass catchers. What if he isn't? What if he actually isn't as bad as he looked last year? and he's got Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram. Like, how much can you think about this for a second? You guys as well. How much of an upgrade are Brian? I mean, he's a rookie, but it doesn't matter. Like, how big of an upgrade is Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram from what he had last year in New England?
Yeah, last year was terrible what they had as far as pass catchers. I don't remember what the pass catching situation was in some of his previous years. Not what your question was, but yeah, it's like the ridiculous upgrade what he's throwing to this year compared to last year.
Yeah, massive. Anyway, I'm at least at the very least, I'm interested to see what his props look like and interested to see how he projects. They had Jacoby Myers at least in 2022. So that's not bad. Last year they had Devontae Parker. That doesn't count. He was washed. The Eagles signed him and immediately released him, or he decided to retire or something. Demario Douglas, Juju Smith-Schuster, who was out a lot of the year, didn't produce. Nah, that was bad. That was really bad. Anyway, let's take a look at wide receivers. Are there any other running backs that we should talk about that we don't have that you'd like to get to?
No, just to add DeAndre Swift, really good spot against the Patriots at $6,500. You mentioned you liked him a lot on Wednesday. I totally agree. Swift is one of those other guys in the mid 6K range who's been playing a really big role for the Bears. It seemed like there was a potential in the offseason that Khalil Herbert and some of the other guys in the mix could potentially make it so that Swift wasn't a workhorse back. He hasn't been the most efficient running back in the league, but he has had some spike games, and it's hard to not really like the spot against the Patriots.
Okay. S&P said, I'm going to push back a little bit. The Jaguars stink, but I don't think Lawrence does. He's 10th in expected EPA, 11th in quarterback rating. I don't think he's been a huge issue. No, that's fair. That's fair. But he also isn't winning them games, S&P, right? Like, he hasn't been horrible, but there hasn't been a single game that you've looked at where you go, man, Trevor Lawrence, despite that terrible defense, got them a win. And we've seen that with guys like Burrow. It's not his fault. There's just nothing Joe Burrow can do. Nothing he can do. But I'd say Trevor Lawrence, maybe not the issue, but he hasn't been the savior or even close this season.
No, he's been fine. Right? Like, I think that his entire career, that's the best way to explain him. Is He's just been whatever the barometer is for an average quarterback in the NFL in terms of like value over replacement. Like, he's just the most average guy that there's been at the QB position for like 3.5 years now.
Pretty much. All right. I think I agree with you. The Jonathan Taylor thing is the only one that kind of jumps off the page to me. Aside from that, I don't really see it. Are there any other? Let me see what I had for running back.
Yeah, I mentioned Bijan Robinson before. Same sort of deal too. When I thought that maybe we could have a little bit more of Kirk Cousins. It's potential. I hear you that it could be a bounce back spot for the Saints, but at the same time too, it could be a team that totally collapses going forward, and they might just get steamrolled.
I also don't think it matters with Bijan because he's so involved in the passing game that he's game script proof. The only downside there is Algier. Like, I wish that guy was just not getting. I mean, essentially splitting rushing attempts with Bijan. It sucks.
Yeah, and he's been pretty good too, Algier. He is, let's see, what is he averaging? He's averaging 5 yards per carry this year. So, he has these games you're watching and people complain online and they'll say like, hey, why is Tyler Algier getting touches? And then you go, look, it's like Tyler Algier rush up the middle for 12 yards. Tyler Algier rush for 8 yards, rush for 20 yards. And it's like, all right, well, I kind of see why he keeps getting touches. He's averaging 5 yards per carry this year. He's been efficient. So, yeah, he's not going anywhere, but Bijan Robinson, clearly the higher upside guy and at kind of modest ownership, $7,700 against a team that might be rolling over. He's somebody who I would be good with ROI boosting to get more of.
Joshua said, especially for newer viewers, could you briefly re-explain some of the basic terms like exposure, pool ownership, and leverage? Absolutely, man. Mm-hmm. And guys, if you are new users for the Sims, and any of our tools, Greg's done some incredible tutorials for these. Where's the best place to find those tutorials? Like the easiest way to pull them, because anybody that's jumping in, maybe they're using our Sportsbook promo to get in for the free month. What's the best way for them to find these?
Yeah. So let me check if it's still pinned to they're usually pinned to, well, now this show is pinned to our YouTube channel. So they're also up on the website. If you go to the website, there's like a Loughran NFL DFS and strategy, and the videos posted there. Or if you just go into YouTube and just search Stokastic NFL Sims, it'll be the first video that pops up.
Yep. And guys, if you ever did want to jump in, that first link in the description, you'll see it. And Jacob can throw it in the chat as well. If you sign up, if you want a free month of all of our tools, like the Sims right here, the single lineup sim that Greg and I use every Wednesday, anything, ownership, player projections, boom bust tool. Everyone has access to the Discord as well. Literally every tool that we have for NFL or any other sport you want, just go to that. Jacob, throw that page up there too, just so people see the process here. It's a simple 4-step process. Just sign up with one of our sportsbook partners, or if you're in a non-legal betting state, any of our pick'em partners as well, and you're getting a free month. It's a $99 value, $100 value. If you go down, you'll see claim offer on all of these. Just click claim offer. That's the most important step here. Click claim offer, deposit. A lot of these are like $5 or $10 minimum deposits. Place that bet on whatever you want. Okay. Place that deposit on whatever you want. Obviously you can deposit more as well. And once that bet settles, just email us at support@stokastic.com with your settled screenshot bet and your welcome email. And you've got access to everything from the core package for any sport you want. It's that simple. Also, you're getting all of these sign-up offers on the sports books too, and the match bonuses on the pick'em site. So essentially you're double dipping across the board and just boosting a bankroll one spot and getting all the tools you need to win lineups, win DFS contests, and build better lineups, and really take your game to a more advanced level using the Sims or single lineup and any of our advanced data on top of that. So yeah, those are the steps right there. Link in the description. Just know you got to click the link, take those screenshots and email them to us, and you can stack them. Let's say you're like, I want BetMGM, I want Bet365 and FanDuel. If you did all three of those, you're talking, I think that's probably $25 in total deposits plus over $400 in bonus bets. You can get 3 months. So you could get 2 of NFL, you could get an NBA core as well and have access to the Sims for both of them. I mean, it's just the most win-win, best promo we've ever done. So if you want to check it out, links in the description. It's in the chat as well. And if you have questions, Greg and I are always happy to answer them, whether it's in DMs on Twitter or it's in Discord. And remember, jump in Discord because that's where all of the help and community is.
Yeah, and also we have a Sims support channel. So if you ever have questions directly about the Sims, you could go in that channel. You could ask me. You could ask the devs. There's always people around.
Definitely. So anyway, yeah, the ownership exposure. Well, I'll start from pool ownership. The pool ownership is when we generate the contest in the contest generator. When we generate all of this, what you're doing is you're trying to artificially create this contest and then simulate the contest tens of thousands of times. That is the ownership of the player in these contests that we generated in the contest generator. So usually it's going to come close to mirroring our projected ownership on, the like ownership projections, but it will look different whether you're changing like from, like high stakes to low stakes or just not percent to first, but maybe percent to first, but also how big the field is and all of that stuff, Greg. And then exposure is just how much of that player you're getting to in your favorited lineups.
Yeah. So basically, like Lofty said, exposure, that's just the amount you have in your lineups. Pool ownership, that's the expected ownership of the players in the contest you're playing in. And leverage, just simply the difference between the two. If you're playing 20% of somebody and they're projected to be 10% owned, which would mean 10% pool ownership, then it means your leverage would be 10%. So that's somebody you're overweight to. And then negative leverage would mean that you're underweight to somebody. So the guys you're most overweight to, basically who you're rooting for on the slate, guys you're most negatively leveraged to, the players you're rooting against.
And then Byron Williams, is there a way to tell the Sims I want to stack this with this quarterback and wide receiver and have it generate a sim with the said players? So remember, this is not an optimizer. Like an optimizer is just running it. It's a lot different. But yeah, if you wanted to, what you can do is just provide stack boosts to that team. You can do individual boosts to a specific player or to a group of players. You can do a projection boost So yeah, and I've done that plenty of times, trying to get to a stack pairing that I like better than our projections. But no, it's not like an optimizer where you're just setting like stack types and stuff like that.
But what you could do, because you're building as many as 10,000 lineups in the Sims. You could go to the lineups, Jacob, and then go to filters, and now go columns, lineup. Yeah. So let's just say you want just going to make up a combination: Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts this week. Go, just type Cousins. Yeah, that works fine. Although it's going to give you anybody who's named Kirk. I don't know if there's other players other than Kirk.
Now Christian Kirk's out for the year.
Yeah. All right. So if you go Cousins and Pitts, do end. Yeah. Now this is going to give you all of the top projected lineups by ROI that have Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts. So if you wanted to, what you could do in here is here are all of the lineups that have the combinations of players you're looking for, and then you could select the ones that have the highest expected ROI. That's how I do it.
Yeah, that right. And the way I'm talking about is in the event that you're not getting, like, there's just a certain player that you like way more and he's not coming up at all. But you're right, with so many lineups, there should be some of those. And Clayton, yes, he said you got to be careful with forcing your will on the Sims because sometimes you are defeating the purpose. Absolutely. You can make adjustments, you can massage it, but be careful that you're not just building whatever you want, because then what's the point of having this? All right, wide receivers. How much Jefferson are we getting to? %33%. And then Greg, 42% Josh Downs. Wow, it's 6,200. That's a lot of exposure to Downs. He is popular. Drake London, assuming he plays, we got 33%, 30% Ladd. These are really interesting exposures at wide receiver this week.
Yeah, nobody's showing up in like 60 or 70% of lineups, which we'll see sometimes on Friday. But also no cheap wide receivers here. One of the other reasons that we were seeing a lot of double tight end lineups to get that value to pay up for some of these wideouts where, Juwan Jennings isn't crazy expensive. Ladd McConkey isn't crazy expensive, nor is Josh Downs, but they're not super cheap either. And you just need to save salary somewhere in these lineups. And that's where some of those double tight ends end up coming into play. But yeah, Downs showing up a whole bunch. And even though Michael Pittman has been playing, and it's kind of uncertain if he's going to end up playing again this week, I think at a certain point, the coach just might say, hey, this guy's been wildly unproductive. Let's just hold him out for a little bit. But it's pretty clear that Michael Pittman, probably because of the back injury he's been dealing with for a while now, he's just a shell of himself. And just Josh Downs has to be getting more involved as a result of that. But this is a lot of him.
It's a lot. Yeah, I don't want that much. I'm happy getting to him. I like that I got 20% George Pickens as well in that spot against Washington. Interesting spot this week. And I don't think Pickens is going to be popular. It's bearing it out. He's at 8% right there. I like that. You know what? Isn't it crazy every single week? And it's hard to say something's wrong because it's so tough with the prices. Philly is a really good offense. We just don't get to them.
Yeah, I mean, the fantasy production has kind of been there, but it's spread out, right? Exactly. It's not like last week, there was the big Barkley game. There's also the Devonta Smith game, but A.J. Brown got hurt during the game. And then you'll see 1 week, it'll be like Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert also out right now. And then every once in a while, there will be individual games where there's somebody you want to hone in on from the Eagles. But more often than not, it's kind of like trying to figure out who to roster from the Boston Celtics. If you guys play NBA DFS, where it's like there's a lot of really good players. Somebody's probably going to have a big game, but it's somebody who's going to be expensive. And it's like a roulette wheel. It could be any of the guys on any given day. It's really, really hard to project because there's so much talent on that offense. And I'd feel more comfortable just going to Justin Jefferson, for instance, over A.J. Brown, just because if the Vikings have a big game, it stands to reason Justin Jefferson is going to have a big game and be involved. If the Eagles have a big game, it could be A.J. Brown, but it doesn't have to be.
I couldn't agree more, yeah. And then Devonta is unplayable because FanDuel and DraftKings preemptively priced him up with A.J. Brown's status in question. You just can't play him there at all. So we wouldn't get any of that. Can you scroll a little bit, Jacob? Are we getting any of like Quentin Johnston or DeAndre Hopkins or... Okay, 7% Garrett Wilson. I do like that. Little Devontae Adams. We really aren't getting a lot of those guys that I thought might pop up a little bit. I thought we'd get more Calvin Ridley. I bet we would on FanDuel. He's wildly underpriced on FanDuel.
Yeah, 57. Actually, the one I'm most surprised we're not getting more of, there's some of them right there. DeAndre Hopkins is $5,300. If I had to, if right now you told me pick one wide receiver to ROI boost and make the Sims give me more of them, it would be DeAndre Hopkins, because based on what we saw last week, and I know it's just one game, but also just using kind of like common sense, some logic on my own here, I would be really surprised if Hopkins is not a top wide receiver going forward this year. I'm not saying like the likes of like Justin Jefferson or something like that, but like not going to be $5,300 again going forward.
There's no chance. No, there's no chance. These salaries came out before he was finished with that game on Monday night.
Yeah. He's going to be more popular than this too.
Definitely. At 5,300, yeah, he might be like 16%.
It's a trap that I've fallen into a couple of times this year where I'm like, oh, this guy has to be priced more expensive and has to be higher owned. Therefore, I'm going to get him into my lineups thinking the player's under owned. And then the slate locks on Sunday. It's like, oh yeah, this guy was like 2 or 3x his ownership projection. I think that's going to be DeAndre Hopkins this week. Like, I want more of him than the 1%, but I'm also not going to build my lineups assuming he's 9% owned.
Right. I'm with you. Tight ends. Let's see. Let's tally up the exposure here at tight end.
All right. Got to use my Rain Man abilities here. Scroll up. All right. So that is... Yeah, we've got almost all of our lineups are double tight end. We had it's like 180% tight end exposure.
All right. So if this is you right now and the slate locks in an hour, are you doing anything here?
I'd be interested to see what the lineups look like. If you wouldn't mind, Jacob, just open up the ROI boosts and just do negative 30% to all of the tight ends that we have like some decent amount of exposure to. Let's say anybody who's a tight end that we have at least 5% of, let's do a negative 30% ROI boost and then refavorite the lineups and see what that looks like.
I love it.
Because the answer to your question, Lofty, is if I was to give ROI negative boosts to all of these tight ends, and then I refavorite my top lineups and it's still giving me a bunch of double tight, you might as well do Pitts as well. He's close enough to 5%. If I was to do this and just still end up getting to a lot of double tight end lineups, then I would just have to say like, all right, the best lineups are double tight end lineups on the slate. It is what it is.
Oh, definitely. And also you might do it and the lineups just look bad.
Yeah. Let's see. So tight ends now. Oh, do you actually accidentally upgrade him instead of downgrade?
I don't think he did.
Interesting.
That can't wait. Go back to lineups for a second. Do you still have the filter with Cousins?
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah. We still have we only had Pitts and Cousins lineups. Good call.
No, you're good. You're good.
No, he accidentally reset the boost.
Oh, okay. So you're right. If you do this and it's still a ton of them.
It's also, this is going to be a little bit, we're kind of fucking Jacob up a little bit here because now he's just doing, just keep doing the negative ROI boosts, but I don't know if he's actually unfavoriting the guys that we had the most exposure to before. Just because he only favorited the Pitts lineups. So it's probably not representative what the tight end exposures actually would be.
Okay. Oh, right. It probably is actually. Not perfect, but all right, go to lineups. Let's see what they look like. Okay, still a lot up top, though. Look at that. Still a lot of 2 tight ends up top, even with those negative boosts.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious about, go back to the exposures, Jacob, or the ROI boosts, I mean. And now go to the tight ends. I just want to see. Yeah, so I would do like negative a little bit there to like Kelsey and to Ertz still. Same deal. Go to like the negative 30%. But either way, one thing I'm seeing here is by downgrading the other tight ends, it just gave us other tight ends instead. Where they're just it's aggressively telling us that the way the slate looks right now, that the double tight end lineups are the best. So even when we tried to downgrade tight ends, it was just like, here's other tight ends that you haven't downgraded yet to add into these lineups.
But it is, it came down a little bit. So that's what, like 80, 100. Go back to those exposures.
Keon
That's
Coleman.
Still a lot.
Keon Coleman is going to be out this weekend.
Okay, yeah. The big one's Amari Cooper, too. But, yeah, we'll see. We'll see if injuries open things up enough to where tight ends don't look as good in the 2 tight, flex tight end, or if they do. But you're right. If that's the case and they keep popping up like this, it might just be one of those spots where you have to pull the trigger. And also, let's not ignore the fact that you've got Juwan Johnson 3,300 without Chris Olave, without Rashid Shaheed. You have Will Dissly, who's been very involved. A lot of like Cade Otton's been incredible. He's expensive now, but just going down the list, there are some tight ends here who have been super effective, super involved. Even a guy like Travis Kelce, we're only getting 6% of, but he's coming off a 16 target game. He's clearly the number one still. It's not shocking to see some of this exposure.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the other thing too about our tight end exposures, even though we limited it, I mean, we still have, it's like 160% tight end exposure, and it was 180% before. So yeah, we took some of them out, but it's still the lineup build that's showing up by far the most for us is these double tight end lineups. And there are a lot of good tight ends that you were just kind of referencing. Most of the best ones are cheap, but even Travis Kelce, he's been good since the injury to Rashee Rice. He's been more involved. He just wasn't involved the first couple weeks of the season. That's not been the case anymore. Like even though Hopkins was really good last week and had the couple touchdowns and had, 7 or 8 receptions, Kelce was still really involved and had himself a big fantasy game. So it looks like he's back to being the Travis Kelce of old from a fantasy standpoint now.
Yeah, it does feel like that, and I'm okay with it for sure. I mean, 14 receptions. It's great. S&P, I love Bill stacks on this slate, and low-owned Jonathan Taylor is a differentiation piece in those lineups that the stack becomes more popular. Oh, yeah, dude, absolutely. I would love that. Plus, Taylor's a better pass catcher than people give him credit for, and Buffalo has literally allowed the most receptions, receiving yards, and targets to opposing running backs, and it's Joe Flacco and not Anthony Richardson. All right, one more thing I want to do here before we go. Before we do that, just keep in mind, guys, if you wanted to ever get free months of Stokastic, if you wanted to get the ring, maybe you're even a sub, but you want to grab that ring with any 20K plus wing, that beautiful Stokastic engraved Hall of Fame ring, spinning display case, just a gorgeous piece of hardware. Rock the Stokastic avatar wherever you are. Stokastic.com/HOF. Just download whichever one you want. There's 6 of them. Use it wherever it is you play. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. Look, you can't chop with more than 3 people. Okay? It doesn't matter how much you win or how much the entry is, but the rules are right there. I get a lot of questions on this, and then people get mad at me in the comment and the DMs when I don't respond right away. You can't, I don't care if you won $10, but it can't be an 80-way chop, right? As long as it's not, just tweet us at Stokastic HOF on Twitter. Collect your free month. You can win multiple times a year now. Free month, $200 value, Sims Max. Win twice, you get another month plus a week. Win 3 times, you get Sims All Access Max. It's a $500 value, and that's just for rocking the avatar, finishing top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, no matter how much the entry fee was. And obviously, Platinum tier grabs you the full year of everything. The Ring of Honor for a 20K plus win, doesn't matter how much or how many contestants are in there, how many entries. So yes, Stokastic.com/HOF. Let's close it with this, Greg. I think this will be fun. Eric Johnson asked a good question.
Mhm.
Are people not playing cheaper stacks like the Chargers or the Pats? So they, in fact, are getting to a lot of Chargers, which I think his line of thinking here is, why are we getting so many 2 tight ends when you can play these dirt cheap stacks like the Chargers? So what do these Charger stacks look like?
Yeah. Chargers very popular. This is currently, I think, the most popular stack on the entire slate.
So let's do lineups. Go to lineups, Jacob, not exposure. Go to lineups. And then go to the right where lineups are and just, or no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Michael,
Just type in Herbert.
I was just going to say go to stack type. So then we know, yeah, it'll be the same thing. You're right. So Swift, Jones, London, McConkey. What? The top one is actually single tight end.
Yes, that one's a single tight end. Stacks McConkey and Disley, but it's McConkey and Disley as the stacks in I think all of these lineups.
We are, yeah. I'd like to get a little bit of a boost to Quentin Johnston if that's me. He's been a big time end zone target for them. But yeah, it looks like we're mainly just jamming the 7 and 6K guys, then going double tight end with a decent amount of Justin Jefferson as well. Anything else you want to look at before we head out for the day?
No, not really. I mean, just like you had said before, we now know that Keon Coleman's out. Let's see what happens with Amari Cooper. If Cooper is out, in addition to Coleman being out, then you really start to get potential for cheap pass catchers from Buffalo.
That would make a huge difference for real. Yeah. So Buffalo, like SMP said, though, Buffalo might just get chalkier as a result with a condensed target share. We'll see.
We did get a super chat here.
Yeah.
For answering this.
BTJ for Debo. I also have Christian McCaffrey that may be out. Oh, it's T-Law may be out rest of season. I'd stick with Debo here.
Yeah, I strongly prefer Debo Samuel over Brian Thomas.
Stick with Debo. They're getting healthy. Christian McCaffrey might help Debo, honestly. Also, don't forget that you also just lost your number 2 receiver in San Francisco. So things probably should only look up, not down for Debo going forward. You know, you lose a guy like Brandon Ayuk and that changes things. Anyway, appreciate you guys hanging out as always. Hit that thumbs up before you go. It's greatly appreciated. What are we at? 79 thumbs up. All right, it's fine. 21 away from 100. People forget. It's a subtle reminder, a little nudge. Thanks for hanging out. Follow Greg at Ehrenberg DFS, me at Lafayette_D on the Twitters. Shout out to Jacob being behind the controls today. And we'll see you guys back here Sunday. It all culminates in the 4-hour live stream leading up to lock. Of course, NBA Deeper Dive live before lock tonight. Big NBA site. So we'll see you there. Peace.